certainly in the tradition of European philosophy, that there's an idea that all of us is inhabited by an other. We're not completely absorbed by ourselves and in ourselves. There is, as it were, another voice in there. And so the idea of writing a diary, in a sense, is always going to be compromised a bit, because there's somebody else sort of stealing the limelight, as it were. And we never actually get to a point where we coincide properly with ourselves and become fully integrated, because there's this otherness getting in the way.
I've been struck by how strongly Joe Orton's diary feels true and authentic, and rings with the voice of Orton himself. But for Orton's famous showbiz friend Kenneth Williams, that isn't so. The outwardly extrovert comic celebrity is hard to recognise in the entries of his own diaries. Where Orton's diary is funny, libidinous and full of life, Williams is unexpectedly self-loathing, reclusive and lonely. I've come to find out which is the real Williams. The diaries mordantly counterpoint the outrageously camp public persona with the raging, vituperative and lonely inner life of this complicated soul.
July 1964. I would very much like to have been born very handsome, not for its own sake, but for the sake of being attractive to others. The reason I'm so conservative in my tiny circle of friends, and the reason I stay in the house so much, is because I think my face and body unprepossessing. This is, of course, the paradox of my nature, the thing that I am, being the thing that I despise.
This is Palladium, the legendary Palladium. Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, Sheila Hancock, everybody. Al Jolson, they've all been here. It is extraordinary. Doesn't seem so big when you're here.
To the world, Kenneth Williams was a successful comedy actor, a much-loved national treasure who starred on stage and screen for over 30 years. By the time he died in 1988, he'd made 26 carry-on movies and had entertained audiences on the radio program Just a Minute for 2 decades. But perhaps his greatest achievement, or most deadly weapon, was his collection of 48 years' worth of diaries.
His autobiography, Just Williams, I think in both the hardback and paperback versions, had a colour photograph on the front where he's sort of sitting in front of a row of these diaries. They were made by the Letts Company, and they're blue, black and large format diaries. And they do look sort of menacing, really, this row of things. And it's as if he's saying, you know, this is here, and wielding these diaries as he apparently did in conversation.
I'm here to meet someone who frequently appeared in Kenneth Williams' diaries.
Dressing room. Hello. I bet you've seen nothing like this. I'm so proud. I'll show you around.
You're in the Rolls Royce.
Unbelievable. I mean, you know what dressing rooms are usually like, darling. And this is
Sheila Hancock is a diarist herself and has published memoirs of the years of her marriage to John Thaw.
Yeah, I have that picture of John because it's a picture of him looking rather proud of me. He used to, if he was pleased with me, he would give me that look. So if I need a bit of encouragement, I look at that.
Right.
Tuesday, 10th October 1961. Fearful row with Sheila Hancock. She said I was ruining other people's performance by talking in the wings, and that I was inaudible on the stage. I didn't reply. I felt she wanted to row with someone and had chosen me. I shan't speak to her again. That's typical of Kenneth. That's how he felt on the day, in the moment. His diary is always very raw. Of course, he spoke to Sheila endlessly afterwards, never stopped speaking to her. He loved her.
Kenneth used to use his diary as a threat to me.
Oh, he did?
Oh, constantly.
Oh, so everybody knew that he kept them?
Oh, yes. Oh, well, I did. I imagine he told other people. I mean, if I was nasty to him, he'd say, I'm going to put that in my diary. I'm going to put that down. I'm going to tell them that you said that. So he obviously
So
wanted...
this imaginary audience that was always going to be somehow,
Absolutely.
he knew they were going to be published.
Absolutely.
Oh, I think he certainly used them sometimes to vent, yes, and to have a revenge on somebody who'd slighted him during the day, and he could insult them freely, and, you know, he used the full extent of his vocabulary on them. And the diaries are full of that kind of recrimination and revenge.
Wednesday, 11th October. This rowing with Hancock does me no good. I find it so difficult to forgive myself. It's unthinkable that I should apologise to her, and she hasn't earned the right to criticise me. But what is worse, I don't care about her or the show. I can happily run on till the end with myself in a state of rage. I could take Fielding for 18 months, so I'm sure I can take her. Nonetheless, I have to face it. I never get on with actresses or any actors I work with at V Close Quarters for V Long. Sooner or later, there is always a fight.
I think in some ways he treated the diary as the partner or spouse that he never had, of course. Most of us, at the end of a day's work, something has annoyed us or delighted us, and we talk about it, or, sound off about it, or complain. He had nobody to complain to, ever really. And so the diary took that role in his life.
I remember having a terrible political row. We did Jim Will Fix It, that dreadful programme Jim Will Fix It. I don't know why we did. And we kept waiting a long while in the green room. Kenny was very right-wing part of the time. He wasn't anything really, but occasionally with me he would be very right-wing because he knew it would upset me. And we had the most appalling row, and he was shouting at me saying, "I'm going to put this in the diary, you are a red communist, you are this," and so we went on, and then we were all beautiful and lovely on Jim Will Fix It.
Kenneth Williams' diaries seem hell-bent on dramatising fight after argument and preserving every last grudge in aspic. But you get the feeling that this endless outpouring of bile and misery has distorted the whole truth of who he really was.
I was shocked when I read his diaries. I didn't read them when he was alive, and I was terribly moved by them. I knew that he could be unhappy, but at the same time, I mean, in a way, they're a distorted view of Kenneth, because he had a lot of joy. He had a lot of friends who were very fond of him. He liked things neat. He liked, his flat, which he didn't allow many people in, but it was pristine.
Did you go in there?
I was allowed in. I was even allowed to use the lavatory, which nobody else, I think, was. But he didn't, you weren't certainly allowed to smoke there, but it was pristine clean, very sparse, very spare. And he collected lovely crystals. That was his decoration. And so, therefore, when things got messy, he didn't like it very much.
So you think that what you said about his diaries at the beginning, that the diaries are a warped perspective on him, that they're not the real man at all?
Not the entire man. Though I think they're obviously part of the man, and they're a part of the man that he kept hidden even from me.
Sheila Hancock had made very clear that Kenneth Williams was not as dark and demonised in his public life, and as she knew him, as he portrays himself in the diaries. So I think more than anything, The Revenge is a cover for him longing to be loved and just incapable of finding personal love beyond this footlight stuff of people admiring him or listening to him on the radio. And that's the thing that he longed for but resisted at the same time. So, absolute push me, pull you, no-win situation.
And what is the power of Williams' diaries? I think it's their complexity, the fact that there is no one single truth to be found within them. They are part of a fractured mirror, confusing us with reflections of more than one Williams. And perhaps it's more satisfying knowing that the truth is elusive, and we have to read between the lines to find it. After all, Kenneth Williams didn't seem to fully understand himself, so how can we?